Welcome to another interview of Israel Tech. I'm excited to have here Jonathan Roizin with two eyes. He's the co-founder and CEO of Flow Security, making sure that all your data is protected, not just while it's still, but also in movement. He's 15 years experience as an entrepreneur, served at 8200 in the Israeli Army, and we're going to get to know a little bit more about Jonathan and what you've been doing in the Israeli tech ecosystem. Thank you for joining us in Israel Tech.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So let's start a little bit with Flow Security. What is it about data security that's so important? People always talk about, as individuals, we hear, protect your data. I hear ExpressVPN, protect yourself, there was a breach. But I feel like no one actually feels that whenever their data was breached, under those, except those rare circumstances where, let's say, your identity was stolen and et cetera, people don't seem to worry too much about data, is my feeling in my day-to-day life. Do you think that's largely true? Is it possible that in the cybersecurity world we're in a bubble about security, especially when it comes to data, and the regular end user doesn't care?
I wish it was that rare, I must say. I mean, data is everywhere, and as an individual, you don't see that often. But every time that you ask for a pizza or falafel to your place,
right,
your details go through many different places, many different businesses, and many different systems. And those systems are not as secure as we want to think, right? This is the big thing. And also I can say that data security was always a big concern. As long as there's data security. Always you want to make it safe and secure, right? For the last, 30 or 40 years where you have digital data somewhere. But in the last few years, it got much more complicated than it used to be. And the reason is that there is a big change of how those companies secure your data, or how they store your data, how they process your data, how much they share it with third parties. That makes it almost an impossible task. So it might be rare as an individual to say that your identity is being theft, but every time you refresh your newsfeed, you'll see there's yet another data breach.
But why should the end user care?
Well,
if I'm a law-abiding citizen, right, then why should it worry me?
So your credit card number is the most interesting one for bad people. If you're losing a credit card number, or if your identity is being theft, or if maybe your pizza, if you like pepperoni on your pizza, or I don't know, pineapple on your pizza, that doesn't.
Be careful, man.
I'm sorry, but pineapple. You mean about the pineapple?
Also the pepperoni. I can coach yourself.
Yeah, maybe that's not such a big thing. But if you think about healthcare-related company that stores also healthcare conditions of people, of minors, this is something that is very sensitive,
right? And
in the wrong hands can make a lot of damage to those individuals.
Quick question about credit cards. I feel like we're at a stage like when I had my credit card was like used, I don't know who. I called the credit card company, they they sent me a new one, they canceled it, and then they didn't charge me that money. I feel like people aren't as worried about credit cards as they used to be, because I think that the responsibility of the data goes on the companies, not necessarily the individuals. I think the fact that as individuals we feel that we have no minimal autonomy over our data, in a sense, and protection, and over that security, that we outsource and put all that worrying onto the businesses. Is that correct? And therefore we don't really worry so much?
I would say that not only credit card numbers, any kind of stolen data that that is stolen is only the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
Because this is one that you see charges that you don't know in weird countries, and then you call your credit card company. But there's some others that you might not be aware of.
Like what? Let's get interested. What's the data that people maybe are stealing, collecting, selling, whatever, in the, like that people may not be so aware of? What do you think goes for a lot of money that we may not expect?
If you look at about credit card numbers, and this is actually not this is one of the type of data that we protect our customers with. But if someone uses not $1,000 purchase, but $2 a month, you might won't notice that. And if bad actors are getting hands on a few hundred of thousands of credit card numbers, that can be a big number for them, but it will be very hard to detect.
It was what's that movie? It was Office Space, where he takes he rounds off the penny.
Exactly. Like very small changes that no one notices. And this is when it's very direct with money, with credit card numbers. But if again we go to personal information, or that can lead to identity theft in a way that you won't see your picture, in the news, yet it can be used by bad actors.
All right, so let's kind of talk a little bit more about Flow from the business perspective, or actually kind of how you started. What did you see? What was the opportunity that you saw in starting Flow?
Right, I would say that I'm in the cybersecurity business for the last a bit more than 15 years. Started my military service when I've done some offensive cybersecurity practice, but then I kind of crossed the fence, and I was the second employee of Signia. It still is a services company. That what we've done is incident response, meaning that after a company was hacked, was believed to be hacked, after major data breaches, I led investigations to understand what has happened and get them out of the mud. Like kind of if someone breaks into your house and then people come in to take, the fingerprints and to understand what happened, to do the forensics. So the geeky version of that. We've done exactly the same thing on servers, on endpoints, on laptops, and then saw that. And that was a unique experience for me. Besides the fact that the company was acquired, it was a very nice success story. But besides that, when you do like professional services for business, you kind of see what is the repetition. And you see hundreds of different companies. You see what are the problems that keep repeating themselves. And this is where I've seen that data security is always the weakest spot. This is where we had almost no tools to help our customers, and customers had nothing for them. So this is where the idea of Flow started.
So you saw that opportunity, you had that idea, and then tell us about kind of you came together with your co-founders. Walk us through kind of how you were able to bring together a team, and then kind of the launching of the business.
Right.
I'd kind of like to hear that.
In a way, I can say that starting my own startup was always kind of my dream. I didn't know exactly how it's going to happen, and I've done all kind of other things. I had a company, a bootstrap company, more in the digital signage, that turned to be in the advertisement field. Don't go there. I mean, I understood it's not for me. I also developed all kind of mobile apps. One of them even got to a few millions of downloads. I mean, I've done all kinds of small things, small gigs. But then after the acquisition of Signia, I decided that I want to start a real startup, right? Like a funded startup, something that can be real big. And then I started the ideation process, right? Finding the idea and also find partners. And that took me more than I planned. It took like 2.5 years, actually, where I met dozens of potential partners, co-founders, and also I went through many ideas. But then I came back to what I actually know a bit more about, which is either data or security. And then I found myself starting a data security company.
Okay, makes sense. Why not? And so when you get started, how long did it take you to raise funding, right? So I know you raised $10 million so far, right?
13, yeah.
13, okay.
Yeah.
So how did you walk us through kind of the partners that were able to help you build and scale? What VCs were involved?
Well, when you ask for how long, depending when you start counting. I mean, if it's from the beginning.
You tell me.
Because the process was I think that the vast majority of the time was to find the right idea and the right co-founder or co-founders. Eventually, I have one co-founder that is more than enough. I mean, it was like 4 people. So I think that part took me from the 2.5 years, like 2 years and 4 months in a way. But when there was the click, there's a time. I can also talk about how frustrating it is to look for an idea. It's not. I mean, I want to say that I learned so much about it, and it's true. But actually, it's very frustrating. But there was one moment that you feel the click, and from that point on, everything went pretty. Everything flew. Everything flows from that point.
Nice plug.
So yeah.
So I would like to hear, maybe you can elaborate on how you find and choose co-founders. I find this to be one of the most fascinating things. That seems like almost every founder has a co-founder, at least one other co-founder. How you bring the team together, how do you decide like who's going to divide what responsibilities? Do you find someone you're like, that's the one I want on my team, then you find the responsibility? Or like, I'm looking for a co-founder that has these unique skills, and then you go out and pursue them? To use your network? Like, tell us about the co-founder pursuit experience, putting together.
I don't think there's any more important decision or more bigger mistake that you could do by choosing the wrong co-founder.
Right.
You can change the idea. You can, investors, you got more investors. This is more dynamic. And of course, there are some cases that you change co-founder, but this is like the heart of the startup. This is so significant. It's like almost like getting married, right? It's not for a lifetime. But it's much more intense for those few years that you're doing the startup. So this is something that I didn't take lightly. And also I heard all kind of stories of many startups that I mean, it can ruin your life if you don't have the right co-founder. But when you do have the right co-founder, and I can honestly say that this is like the best thing, like in this ocean and roller coaster that where I'm in, which is having a startup, having the right co-founder is the solid rock that you can rely on. So the way that how do you do that? How do you find your co-founder? There is no single way. And I can say I'd say something more generically. Something that many founders do, and it's very annoying, is that I tell you how it's done, and then they tell you a single way, and then you ask, oh, how did you do that? Exactly the same way. So they tell like what they.
Sounds very Israeli.
Very Israeli. Yeah, I'm sorry.
This is my dad tells me.
Yeah, there's one way of doing it, and that's exactly how I do it.
Why do you do it this way? He doesn't even actually ask me. He's like, you shouldn't be doing it like this. You should do it like this.
Yeah,
I'm like, it's been working well for me. I've been doing this for several years.
Exactly. So I won't do that, and I won't go to that path. And every entrepreneurship is different. This is the magic, right? This is the unique thing. But I can say that for me, what worked was just to open my mind to talk to as many people as I could. And I had my connection. I mean, it's not like I didn't know people from before, but trying to do work with them to take a few weeks of starting to work together as if we already started. And then very quickly you understand if it's a go or a no-go. And it's funny how similar it is to the dating scene.
Oh, yeah?
Honestly,
Who pays?
It's even more ridiculous than that. That you go, you have low expectations, but then it goes well. Then you get home, like, oh, maybe I'll text him. No, I'll wait him to text me first. This kind of things.
That's hilarious. You couldn't have like a shadchan, like a matchmaker?
Yeah, but there are matchmakers.
All right, you would think. Okay, so.
Yeah, this is Israel, of course. Right. Of course there are matchmakers. But anyway, so I've done that for those 2 years. Some people I've met after one date, they didn't turn to the second date. But some others I worked for several months. So it was like the big range. But then when I met Rom, Flow's co-founder and CTO, things got much easier, I must say.
How do you know? What was it? Were you going into looking for a co-founder, looking for one certain thing? And then maybe like what surprised you about him? Like that you're like, okay, I think he's the right person.
I don't think I was looking for something specific. I'll tell you more. I was very flexible because of my background.
It was more about a personality vibe, like
not only personality. It has to be in the personal level, but also in the professional level. But in the personal level, you don't really know what you're looking for. It's more like a feeling that there must be a click, kind of slight combination. You don't want to find someone that is identical to you, but you want to have someone that you can speak with, and solve dilemmas in a way. And also professionally, you don't want someone that is exactly like you. This is a mistake I think that many entrepreneurs do. But also, you don't want someone that you won't speak the same language.
Right.
And I think in my case also, it was even more complex because there are some people that are the typical CTO, the typical CEO, or something like that. And for me, it was a bit more flexible than that because I have a technical background. I mean, Rom laughs at my code. He thinks that I don't code well, but I am technical. But at the same time, through Signia, as a professional service, etc., by leading, working with customers there, I also opened to the business side. So I could have been, I think, a CTO and a CEO, and it wasn't clear to me. So actually, I came very open-minded to that. That it really depends what the world will bring me, right? And then I can see. And I think in this case, we actually nailed it because with Rom's background, which is he's much more technical than me, he's the brains, right? I'm the looks, of course, but he's the brains. So he's the perfect candidate to be CTO of a company like Flow. And with my background in the business aspect, in the cybersecurity, knowing how to work with CISO, which is our main buyer, it was typical for me to be the CEO.
So you're talking about finding the proper matches when it comes to co-founding. Let's talk about finding proper matches when it comes to VCs, partners, investors. Right. How does that go? Did you go and pursue? Did they find you? How did it happen?
Also, there's a funny dance there because you want to be pursued, but so you don't want to be the one that is actively saying, "Hey, I'm looking for funding," but you are looking for funding.
So it's like playing hard to get.
So yeah, right. I mean, this is like the type of playing hard to get. But eventually, just people, right? You want to talk with people. You want to talk with the VCs. You want to make them know you. And if there's a good match, there's a good match. And something that like many other founders told me, like as an advice, is don't say that you're not fundraising. Like only go and like ask for an advice, right? Like say that, what do you think about it?
Aren't they onto that? The VC, though, he wants advice, but I know what he really wants.
I mean,
right.
yes, yes and no. I think that, but like someone told me, don't bring a presentation. That like
I agree with that.
Because that looks like I'm not looking for fundraise, but look all the slides that I
That's a
prepared.
good sales tip too. The presentations need a
yeah, maybe
not till they unless they ask for it.
Maybe but with this it's even more important because then you don't want to look too prepared, but at the same time you want to be prepared. It's not like you want to come and say, let's talk in very high level.
Right.
And I think something that happened to me and Rom is that I think we started a bit too early, meaning that we were start talking about the idea. The idea of Flow was like 2 weeks. Rom and I started working together. This is where we already had a very similar idea to what we have today, which is actually a huge market today with many different players. But this was enough for us to fundraise, and I think that we should have waited a bit longer to be a bit more precise on some aspects of it. And maybe something that I can say about that is that it's good to start talking with VCs, but do it when you feel that you are actually comfortable with not only the story that is the minimum enough to get the money in, but after that, many people think that fundraising is the goal. It's not the goal, it's only the beginning, right? Based on that, you want to build a business, you want to build a product, you want to get some revenue on top of that. You want to make a big company, you want to hire people. All of these things requires planning, and that is something that after the fundraising, it's actually harder to close the gap if there is such.
Got it. Your funding. Tell us about who are your partners? How did you meet them? Like, were you introduced to them, or how did that work?
This is the nice thing of being in the part of the world that almost every second person in the street is a founder, right? You have so many people to ask.
Right.
I mean, when I started, I said, okay, who are my founder friends? And then I said, okay, they are most of my friends, or something like that. I mean, this is like a ridiculous statistic. So I started by asking them, who are your founders? Are you happy with them? And then I built a list of founders, of VCs that I said, okay, this is the investors that I want to speak with. And then I kind of tried to understand if they're relevant to me, and then just started speaking with them in a way that getting them intrigued, in a way that will reach out to me. This is how it started.
So how much have you raised so far?
$30 million.
And from whom?
$5 million of my seed round was led by Amiti, VC, an Israeli VC with Ben, which is an amazing investor. I'm so happy to have him on board. There were also another European VC that joined, and some angel investors, leader angel investors from the industry, like CyberArk CEO, Dimokadi, and all 4 founders of many founders of great cybersecurity startups that was acquired for $100 million. So that was our seed round. And then we actually extended that by safe fundings of another $80 million. So up to date, $30 million, and the $8 million were from Amdocs and Single Ventures.
So let's go back to younger Johnny. So in the Army, on LinkedIn it says you're a team leader. What does that mean? Anyone can make up anything on LinkedIn. So what did you really do?
So I was in intelligence unit, 8200, the famous, like the Israeli NSA. Like many founders in the cybersecurity space, I must say.
So what did you do at 8200?
Well, I can't talk too much about it, but I can say that I've done cybersecurity, like hands-on offensive cybersecurity.
And how is that different from defensive, which you're doing now?
It's exactly the opposite, because there you are. Actually, it's funny because it's not that different in the professional part of it. I mean, to be a good cop, you have to be a good thief. You know what I mean? You have to know how things work in both sides. But of course, it's very different. Also, doing it under the military or in the private sector, it's also very different.
Okay, got it. So you have this experience of doing offensive cybersecurity, 8200, whatever that is, and then so did you build any relationships or anything there that led to furthering your career?
So you're asking what happened in the army, or why so many founders are from the?
I'm just trying to. Basically, I'm trying to understand is that I speak to you in 8200. About 40% of the people we've interviewed so far, I don't know, third or in 8200.
It's almost boring, right? I mean, what's going on?
Right. It was also boring because people can't share what they do. Maybe you can kind of speak to a little bit what, if you have anything to add, what is it about 8200 that is such a great stepping stone to be an entrepreneur?
Absolutely. This is one of the things that.
And is it a chicken egg? Does it make you, or does the who 8200 looks to recruit, they happen to have natural entrepreneurial skills, or is that I'm trying to understand how much of entrepreneurship in a sense is a talent or skill? Is that they find someone that has the talent and then there's some nurturing or not?
Or just good scouters, or
that's what I'm saying. Right, or good trainers.
Or good trainers. Right. I get the question. So I'll say that what comes to mind is that they probably teach you things around cybersecurity that we can't talk about it on camera.
Right.
But that makes it that help you, like the elite technology that help you to be a good founder. And that is true. But honestly, I don't think that this is the biggest part. I think that me personally, I think that generally speaking, it's quite true that helps you to be a good founder is a can-do mentality. That it comes together. I mean, they scout the can-do kids, like 16, 17 years old before they start the army, but also it's something that builds into you. And I have a story here that I think you'll like. I was also in a very prestigious course. I won't say the name, but let's call it ABC.
Oh, the ABC one.
The ABC one. Yeah.
Very prestigious.
Yeah, very prestigious, very well known. So there's something there that they won't help you during the training. I mean, they give you a mission to do, and then you have a way of asking something like, I don't understand, and then they'll tell you, you're an ABC. You'll work it through. I'm like, okay, but I literally don't understand what is happening here. I'm 2 hours stuck, but you're an ABC, you'll be fine.
It's like yeshiva of tech.
I wasn't.
You're in yeshiva.
I've never been in yeshiva.
Because like you're trying, why this, why that? And been like, they just tell you, like, think it through.
Okay.
And here's a bookshelf of 1,000 books. Figure it out.
So I know how does it work in yeshiva, but I can say that what's frustrating is that after like 4 or 5 hours in front of that problem, you actually solve it. And then you're like, they were right. I hate them. Okay.
Oh, really? Did you get more excited? Like, yeah, I solved it? Or like they were right?
But this is the thing. That then you get another task and you say, the last one, now I understand. It was doable. This is impossible. And then you say, no, you're an ABC. You'll make it work. And after a few weeks, that can-do mentality is getting, it fills you. And I remember that one time I came back home and I wanted to wash my clothes. And my mom told me, the washing machine is broken. I'm sorry. I mean, we'll have to find a solution. And then I told her, give me a second. And I just look for the error code, something that, it's not a big deal, but just looking for the error code, and I Googled it, and I understood that it was just soap stuck somewhere, and I managed to solve it. And then my mom asked me, what is it that you're doing in the army? She thought I'm a technician of washing machines. But this is, I think, a good example of the type of things that you think are impossible.
Right.
And then you can do it. And then that ABC, there are many different ABCs, right, in the army,
right,
in the intelligence service.
Right.
So when you get to do something that everyone else tells you that it is impossible, only 1 out of 20 startups actually manage to succeed. This is when you say, you know what, I'm an ABC.
Right.
I'll make it work.
So since 8200, has there ever been something like, all right, like we need to figure out how to do something, and then you're like, it's not possible, or just is your framing is like, anything is possible? In
the last week, I had maybe 50 of those. This is just the life of
an entrepreneur.
You're going on an unpaved path.
Yeah.
Right? You're doing something that no one else has done before. In some aspects, maybe you do. But this is the thing. Always it looks impossible.
Right.
Every single step looks impossible. And then you learn to trust yourself.
That you'll figure it out.
Bring the right people to figure it out.
When I get there, figure it out.
Exactly.
It's very, how much do you think uniquely to 200? Do you think part of it comes from the Israeli culture? As Herzl said, Im tirtzu enzu agada, right? If you will it, there is no way. So how much of it do you think is maybe the culture of 8200 was born out of the culture of Israel, of the Israeli culture and the Jewish cultures? I'm just curious what you think, if you have any opinions there.
It's a mix of everything, I think. I think it's not, it's not a coincidence that we live in a place where we need to reinvent ourselves every
All the
single
time,
time.
yeah.
That
It's our greatest strength, I say.
as Jewish people, we had to move more than once.
Yes.
Most of the time, we're against our will.
Yes.
And we had to reinvent every single time. And I think that also all the concept of, believe me, we've passed through Pharaoh, so
Yeah.
I think we can manage
pass
pass this through. This is a mentality that also led to the startup concept.
Right.
Also to actually solving things in the military that makes us a very strong military, even though that we're very, very small military. And at the same time, it also helps startups to be successful, to be successful in places where startups from other parts of the world just can't.
So let's take us over a little bit, kind of. So after you left the Army, how long were you in the Army?
5 years.
Okay, and then did you have to sign up for 5 years the whole time, or just how did?
I was an officer, so I keep extending
You had
it
it, right.
until and I
When did you decide to leave, or did they kick you out?
I did decide to leave, and it wasn't an easy decision because I was a team, like a small team lead and a bigger team. I don't even know how to translate it. It was a dilemma whether to stay or to continue, or to stay, sorry, or to continue to my next adventure. And I decided to continue. The dilemma was that things that you do in the army, being with the very best people, in the moment that they give everything from themselves, and it has a huge impact that you see in front of your eyes. And I think the last few months since October 2023, it's clearer than ever why it's so needed. This is something that you cannot compare to anything else. But at the same time, there's also something in going to the next step, and also for me it was going more in the entrepreneurship path. That also.
So you knew immediately you wanted to be an entrepreneur when you were considering leaving.
I think in a way I always felt entrepreneurial.
Do you think that's hindsight? Like, people have asked me similar questions, and I was like, as a kid, like, oh, so you like entrepreneurial as a kid? And I was like, it's like, no, other than like trading baseball cards. Most of my childhood was playing video games and sports. I
wanted to be a doctor, actually.
Oh, did you?
I think. I remember it.
Was that from your mom?
What time? No, my dad. My dad's a doctor.
Your dad. I knew it. I knew it was a parent.
One of them.
I felt the pressure.
Yeah. And his father was a doctor as well. It's like, I'm cutting here.
Yeah.
A very wonderful.
And he doesn't talk to you
chain.
Anymore.
Maybe this is why for a time I did ideation in the digital healthcare. I wanted to go to that path.
All right, so let's go into your career. So you left after 5 years. You were like, okay, maybe enough. It was a hard decision. You felt that you maybe had some entrepreneurial inspiration or aspiration. Right. What did you do right out of the Army?
I started working in startups. That was the most obvious path for me. Like, let's see how that goes.
Did you have in mind? Sorry to cut you off. Did you have in mind when you were going to go look for work at a startup and work there? Like, my goal here is to see if I want to get to know myself to see if founding one is what I want to do. Did you have that in mind when you took your first job in the private sector?
That changed all the time, I must say, to be honest. Also after the Army, after my military service, I also done a few months of traveling, which is like the common thing in Israel. But as I'm Argentinian, I speak Spanish. When I traveled to South America, it was also my second time for a long period of time. It was very different. I hitchhiked, I stayed in local people's houses. It was a very mind-opening experience. And actually at that point, this is where I thought, you know what, I don't want to be an entrepreneur. Why working so hard?
Right.
Why, maybe
went to South America where they don't work.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen how they live there, but it's funny. But actually,
they live
locals, they know. It's not good for the economy, but they were very happy, enjoying their weekends, their afternoons.
Very simple.
Very much more simple. So it wasn't that clear to me if I want to be an entrepreneur at all times, but there was some kind of fire inside of me.
Right.
That I think that this is something that even when I thought that I would want to be an entrepreneur, it led me to a path of always being in the smallest startups possible, to be very close to where decisions are being made, and that was never enough for me. So I always wanted to go further and further, and I think it was just something that was meant to be.
Tell us about, what was the first startup you were working at?
I started working in a startup called Fanzone.
Fun Zone?
Fanzone.
A fan zone.
Fanzone, yeah. It was like a sports startup for fans, how do you say, like carpooling to the stadium and games.
Tailgating? Did they tell you?
Something like that. But it didn't work out. And then very quickly, actually, I moved to Signia, which was the biggest one where I spent a few years. Then I was the second.
What did you do at both of them? What were your responsibilities for these companies?
I was a tech guy. I mean, in the first one I was like an engineer, a developer, a software developer. But the second one, which is Signia, this is where I've done professional services or services. So this is where I've done like a bit of everything, right? Forensics and some development as well when needed. But then also I turned to be a team lead, and I led investigations, and I managed also the business side of things, working with security teams to help them through the crisis that they were going through.
Awesome. And then, so how long were you at Signia?
For 4 years. No, a bit less, like a bit more than 3 years.
Mm-hmm. And tell me more about like what you were doing at Signia. That's a long time, and it's significant once it's long.
Right.
But it's enough to kind of learn and get your hands in there and work with other people. And so maybe if you can tell us a little bit about kind of what you did there, if it's relevant.
Sure. I mean, there are two aspects of it. One is that I was one of the first employees, like second or third employee.
Okay, that's interesting.
And then,
how many are they now?
Now there are a bit more than 200.
Okay.
And when we were acquired, it was around 80 or 90 employees. So
Nice.
I've seen that growth. So this is one
So
part.
what's it like? Let's talk about being brought on as an early employee. This is fascinating. How it is, because you weren't a founder or co-founder or anything. You said you were the second employee? Third employee?
Yeah, more or less. Second or third, depending on how you count.
Okay. I'm sure someone will correct me. What is it like? I'm sure they take hiring far more seriously when you're like, I need one person to hire when I'm just starting a company, one person to hire, and that money is far more important. They haven't reached scalability or anything yet usually. What is it like do you remember anything unique about the recruiting process, and what was it like to be one of the first employees? And were you pursuing a company to be a first employee?
Yeah, I started by saying yes. This is something that was very exciting to me, to see the beginning of something, right? The creation, and also take part of that. This is something that I really liked, and this is also what, if you ask me, what do I feel most about it? First, it's saying the growth or something that there's nothing there, and then you build. It can be a product. In that case, it was a process, services, and a team. But besides that, also there are many opportunities in these cases, because the company grows quicker than the people that can actually fill that gaps. And then there's many vacuums that you kind of get pulled into in a natural way. And I think this is the best part of that experience. For example, there was a point of time where I interviewed. I was the main interviewer of Signia, but it wasn't my role. But it just happened that someone had to do it. And then they came along and they needed training, and we had some documentation, but it wasn't the best one. So I rewrote it, right? And I kind of built more and more things that weren't part of my main objective in the company, but someone had to do it, and I was there. So this is where you kind of learn what are the things that you're naturally being pulled into, and you learn to build yourself in a way that I think it's fascinating, and it was a big part of my growing in my career.
Do they give equity for early employees?
Yes.
So that worked out.
Usually equity.
Because they don't have enough
I'm a
money
big
usually, or because they want to keep people, they find good talent, they want them to stay for a while, or what is the
I think it's both. I mean, if you look here at Flow, my policy is everyone gets equity. Everyone. It's not a single person in the company that doesn't have some form of equity. And the first employees, of course, have a more significant one. And it's kind of both. I mean, one thing is that if there will be when there will be a great success,
amen, brother,
in Flow, I want everyone to enjoy that. But also, I want them to feel that they
invested.
There's yet another. I don't think compensation shouldn't be, in my opinion, the biggest motivation for people. But it is a motivation, and I want them to feel that I'm well compensated, and that when there is great success, they will enjoy it as well.
I find the data to be very fascinating, data security in particular. You're selling to enterprises only, or you're
Correct.
selling to governments also?
No, no governments, enterprises.
So what's it like to sell in the enterprise? I mean, let's say the economy hasn't been so hot the last year and a half, 2 years, inflation, especially the tech industry. So how are you able to kind of grow through it? What's it kind of like doing that right now?
I must say that the last 3 years of ours as a company were a roller coaster in the economy, right? There was a hype of 2021, so much money out there, and then a crisis, especially in the technology, and you had to go through that. And something that what we've done is that first I'll say, like, generally speaking, if you have a good product, if you're solving a real problem, then people will find the budget anyway. Yet it is always difficult. Something that we've always tried to be was very lean. This is something that's quite unique, especially in cybersecurity.
Right.
There's some concept of just build something that kind of works and then throw as much money as you can on the wall, see what sticks, bring loads of salespeople, be very aggressive in the marketing. And if you get to some level of revenue, then you're okay. And if not, you can sell the company for a small amount or shut down. And we took a different path, especially with those turbulences in the economy. And that is, we put a lot of effort on the product and the right approach to it to solve the problem in a way that we want to make sure that it is sellable to large enterprises, and only after that accelerate on the go-to-market machine. And that worked out pretty well for us. I mean, currently we are 3 or 4 times more expensive than any alternative, yet we win over 70% of POCs of when people test the product. And that includes very large organizations like Staples, I can mention, as a big customer of ours, just signed a 3-year deal. And we have a few others that are in the process that I won't be able to share, but a few dozens of customers that are very pleased with the product.
How do you win 70% of POCs?
I'm
just saying, is there, because data security is relatively saturated for cybersecurity industry.
Right.
So how do you distinguish yourself to a point, or is it just like you solve it in such a different way that it's no contest so often?
Right. There's something very annoying about cybersecurity.
Please tell me.
And that's everything sounds the same.
I know.
Everyone thinks, no, I have a platform that is for something that sounds so specific. And then you ask, but isn't more like part of the bigger problem? No, those 2 separated platforms. And it's so ridiculous. And I think eventually there are not too many real platform plays in cybersecurity. Something that really solves a problem in a way that is deep enough to actually prevent things from happening rather than just showing a nice graph or a nice dashboard. And if you ask me, how are we different? I think this is exactly it. And I won't be here too specific around data, but I can say that many data security solutions just give you vitamin C, right? Like data security hygiene. They talk about data, but then look on a misconfiguration in certain database and then put it in a very nice red flag on your dashboard. But it doesn't really solve the problem. And something that's unique about us is that we took a much deeper approach, which is a runtime approach, meaning that we don't only scan data and look, oh, here you have some personal information, but we actually map the full data flow, hence our name. This is the data in motion part, the end-to-end journey. And by doing that, we're not just giving you the feeling that we are protecting you, but we actually prevent data breaches from happening. Like one customer of ours told me, people are selling me vitamin C while I'm losing blood. So we are here to stop that from happening. And that very differentiated approach made us be more expensive, yet we have over 70% of POCs, and most of our POCs we've been compared to 3 or 4 other players at a time.
Wow.
Yet we win all of that. We have won almost 100% of renewal rate, of 50% of upsell. So people are very pleased for what we do, and all of that being extremely lean.
So how do you do that so many upsells, so many POCs? How do you do that while being so lean? Is that a feature or is that a challenge?
Kind of both. And I can say many things in hindsight.
Yeah, right.
That things are going well now, but it wasn't that obvious. I'm very proud to say that everything that I've just told you, we've done with 0 salespeople, zero SDRs, almost no go-to-market. We are working more on marketing efforts, but this is quite new. We've been very lean in that aspect as well. And this goes back to what I told you before. We want to be very precise because it's so saturated, because it's so everything sounds the same, and we don't want to be here for just to solve something small, but to be a real platform, a real solution. So we were very specific on that. And actually now this is the time of ours to accelerate. So now we are hiring salespeople. And
so you haven't had salespeople till now?
No.
Who does the selling?
You're speaking with 100% of the salespeople in Flow Security.
So what percent of your time is spent on sales?
I mean, actually, it's not even true. I would say that the product sells itself. It's not. Okay.
Everyone says it. Come on, you're gonna. I'm sure. Ideally, yes. Once they incorporate it, once they feel and see it. But first, you need a prospect. You need to reach them. You need to show them. You need to answer the objections, etc. So then the product may speak for itself. But.
I mean, let me rephrase. I would say that giving the product, we do need less effort than usual, less whining and dining, I'll put it this way, to make it work. However, of course, it's a lot of work. And during the day, I'm a CEO, but during the night, I'm a salesperson. So this is exactly, I would say a big portion of my time is around sales. But it's not only sales, because even when I sell, it's not only selling. It's also fine-tuning the product, understanding the messaging to get to the right point. And
so
this is where
you get that feedback loop that you can, from the sales call, hey, actually, this has come up a lot that a salesperson may not be. So they'll just say, we can't do it or not that's on the product roadmap. You could say, hey, this has been coming up. And so you kind of get a feeling what the challenges are in the market. And then as CEO, you can then go tell your team, hey, there's something here that ideally we need to look into solving because people are asking about it.
This is exactly the thing. When you have a very short distance from the customer,
exactly.
You know what doesn't work. Because let's say that you have salespeople and they don't sell. Is it because of them? Is it because of the messaging? Is it because of the product? You don't really know. So this is a good thing. I do think that we might have stretched a bit too far. And now we have to close that gap. So now we are hiring 3 or 4 or 5 even sales people at a time. But I think that there was a very big advantage of that in our precision, giving our very lean approach.
So what's great often about, even as a funded startup, when the CEO is still doing all of the sales, is that there's this big sense of like ownership, right, within the company, and usually that's felt when people know that you're doing the sales and you're responding back to the product. There's a sense of ownership, and I find from a lot of startups I speak to, that kind of goes into the culture. Do you think is there kind of like a spillover effect from the culture from you being the CEO and the co-founders? Do you think culture is intentional when it comes to a startup, a tech startup in particular, or is it kind of develop more organically? How much is it trying to understand how you built your culture here?
100%. Another thing.
100% what? Organically or?
It's 100%. No, it's 100% something that you have to put your mind on. I mean, you have to focus on that. You have to actively work on that. And I don't think that there is something more important in a startup other than the DNA and the culture. And I couldn't agree more with what you said about the ownership. And that is not only for me as a CEO, like a founder-led selling person. It's not only that. The way that I think it's very important, and I'm proud to say that I think this is how many people feel here, is that ownership, that this is something that is theirs. And I'll give you an example from the selling point. We have something that we do so far is that we record our sales calls whenever we're getting approval to that. That is something that is open to all of our employees. All of the sales calls, even the ones that went really bad, the ones that are in the middle of the night, that I have a Borat accent, it really doesn't matter. All of those are open to 100% of the employees, and they are actively looking at it. They see what works, what doesn't work, how their features that they worked on, how they converted to a paying customer, something that doesn't work. This is something that makes everyone feel part of the success, part of the failure, but part of what is so unique about being a startup.
Fascinating. And so this transparency that kind of comes through and they take it, I feel like the more people, I'm speaking for my company in a bit, So like I have open calendar, everyone sees my entire calendar. Like the more people kind of get a see-through of where the company is going and what's kind of being done, in a sense, they see that there's like a vision and a path going forward. And then I find that in a sense, there's some entrepreneurship happening within my company, Wadi, not Israel Tech, that too though, that people are going and trying to pursue and find other solutions and things because they see me also trying to do that. What kind of entrepreneurship are people trying to take ownership of trying to try new things and test new things on their own is being done over at Flow?
I think it's crucial to have that, right? That people will have the initiatives to do things. Also, I must say it has disadvantages as well, right? Because when people knows about everything, then also they have many opinions about it, and it makes a bit more friction in the communication. But I think that the advantages are much higher than that. And as for these entrepreneurships, things that happen within the company, that happens all the time. It can happen with micro things, like someone that told me, front-end developer here, that told me, there was a sales call. I think you didn't understand the question. Let's look at it once again. I'm like, really? What are you talking about? And he was right. This is something that changed the path with that specific customer. And it goes all the way to when we talk about rebrand or talking again about our messaging, to be one category, to be another, to put more emphasis on the runtime, on the data in motion, all of that. This is something that everyone is involved in. And yes, of course, there are also entrepreneurships in many ways, but when everyone knows what are the objectives, everyone knows what are the challenges, then their ability to bring to the table things that are relevant and to help the company grow and at the same time feel part of it and feel that are center of the startup rather than employees. This is what makes, I think, startups unique. This is what I'm trying to do here in the culture.
So as an entrepreneur, you were talking about what you did at 8200, what you did at your first job and at Signia and founding Flow, and the rumors of an acquisition soon. Where do you see yourself kind of in the future? You know, a lot of people, they would exit and then they would try to maybe build something new and bigger and exit later. What do you think, what do you see for yourself, and what advice would you give to younger entrepreneurs that are just founding startups in Israel?
Wow, you mean what's the next step in a way?
For you, yeah, and looking back, I mean, based on your experience, and do you have anyone for doing first-time founders?
So I would say, as for myself, I feel very deep in this journey, and I think that Flow, for me at least, is much bigger than a data security company, right? In the last 3 years, only 3 people left the company from the Wish. 2 of them did it to starting their own startup.
Oh.
So
I say 2 of them like died skydiving.
more or less. So this is exactly the thing that I like the fact that I have influence on many things, on many people, and also on the Israeli economy, which
right.
Also in these days, again, after what is happening today with the war and things that makes it, I feel more Zionist, more Zionist than ever.
Right.
So I think that if I'm looking forward, and I don't know how long will be the path of Flow itself, but for me personally, it will always be to continue with that influence to help people as much as I can, because I think that this is the best part of my job. And if I look on younger entrepreneurs, it's very hard to say, because again, I don't want to go back to the mistake of telling people what I had to hear, because this is maybe something that is different. But what I can say is that there is no stronger ability than to continue with the path that you believe in. If you think that this is something that you want to do, just continue doing it. Believe in yourself in a way that this is a crazy thing to do, to be an entrepreneur. You have to be a bit megalomaniac, right. Narcissist. You have to be, if you think that you are the one out of 20 that will succeed, you have to be a bit crazy. But continue with that, thought, because otherwise there is no other way.
All right, in that case, I'll call you crazy. You can call me crazy. If people want to stay up with your craziness and Flow, where's the best place to find them?
There's our website. Follow us on LinkedIn.
Right.
Follow us on Instagram to see.
We'll put everything in the description. You'll
Sure.
put it so people can see it down below.
Sure. And I must say, where's the camera? We are hiring. So if you're talented people and you're looking for, this is from my HR.
Yeah, I know.
She'll kill me. She'll kill me if I won't
go
do
for
it.
it.
So
We'll send this segment.
So looking for engineers, for salespeople, for DevOps. I mean, if you're good, give us a call, please.
They have great coffee. But if you're trying to lose weight, be
The
careful.
best
They got a
coffee.
lot of food just hanging around here.
Yeah, we take coffee very seriously.
Yeah, and whiskey.
You've seen the...
Revital, like 4 drinks already. We just sober up.
that explains a lot,
Yeah.
That explains many things.
So if the editing sucks, the videos, there's a problem. It's because it's Revital. Thank you for following Israel Tech. You can follow us on all our social channels. I'll also be down in the description. You can also follow Johnny on his socials and flows, also in the description. And I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for tuning in.